Okay, well, we'll try. I don't know what's going on particularly. Yeah, the internet's up and down. So frustrating. I see other people in the area are having issues as well. Oh, the green screen's a bit of a mess, but that's all right. We can live with it. Give me a second. It's a bit better. Anyway, I mean, the bottom line is we'll go for as long as we can, or we go until the end of the hour, and we'll see what happens. Yeah, it wants me to have a day off, but sadly, it's terrifying. It's one of those things you just can't control, and if it's offline, it's offline, and then you're left with nothing. So anyway, came by to say hi on vacation. Hi, Stampser. Enjoy your vacation. There you are. Honourable 596 says, do you appreciate the sacrifices chat has made for your internet? Thus far, I counted chicken, a goat, 10 squirrels, and a goblin champion. Well, that's fantastic. We'll see. It does seem to be very strange. That's all I can say. That is all I can say. Now, what I was getting to in that long-winded rant of mine was that today was meant to be spent setting up the studio. And as a matter of fact, I was having some friends coming around to help me set up LED lights for fancy backgrounds and all that sort of stuff. This green screen behind me is actually a thing of the past, or at least hopefully it will be once everything's set up. But of course they couldn't come through, so we're in sort of temporary setup mode, if you like. So there you are. Yeah, Dracovale, it is absolutely like the apocalypse when there's no... That's going again. It's going red. I can see the little bar. It's green now. Yeah, it's testing me. Anyway, so I hope that you've all had a fantastic start to your weekend, one way or another. If you're in Europe, I hope you had a fantastic Saturday. If you're in America, I think your Saturday is going to be great. At least I hope it will be. And we'll go from there. We will go from there. So yes, my game that I was running today, I wanted to tell you a little bit about it. What was interesting was the group didn't know each other. I mean, that's the joy of going to conventions, as far as I'm concerned, is that you get to play with people that you don't know. What I think is different from sitting around a table at conventions, I think in a convention there's a certain energy, in a real life convention. Can you hear me all right, by the way? Is the volume okay? Oh, let's get you down, but closer. There you are, that might work. You know, what you have at a real convention, let me rephrase, what you have at a physical convention is that there's definitely a certain energy that goes on, and there's a vibe. And I kind of remember the conventions that I attended where the players used to have fun almost being as crazy as they could be. It was an opportunity to sort of literally let your hair down because you were surrounded by like-minded people. And you were in a geek safe space, if that makes sense. With online play, you're in the same space, but now there's all the online rules that you have to get used to about not talking over each other. And so everyone's awfully polite. And what then happens is no one knows then how to respond very well. And I forget that because I usually play with people who either have watched shows so they know sort of the protocol, or we've had a session 0 or 2, so there's a familiarity and there's a comfortability that is there. And you know, today was an example where the group didn't want to talk over each other, and so then they ended up not talking. And the solution that I came up with, and it worked, and I started to become quite militant about it, simply because it worked so well, was to default back to a suggestion I had a while ago in one of the other videos, is you literally are just working your way through each and every single person in and out of combat. And all that I did was the names of the characters as I wrote them down when I was writing down their character names. That then became the order in which we then worked through. And so it would be, right, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And that sort of constant cycling, because otherwise some of the players just, there's no connection. The other thing was one of the players didn't have video, just audio. Everyone else had video. And it was so interesting when that player was quiet. you kind of went, well, have they disconnected? Are they angry? Are they not saying anything? Because you couldn't see their facial reactions. And again, those, people who play online and over voice, it is a very different experience. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. The talk this evening was the Imagination talk, which I gave at Gen Con last year and in Finland the year before. And it's always fun giving it to people, especially to a new crowd. And today was a new crowd, I think. I didn't recognize anyone's faces there. But then again, I did... I was only going to promote it today for tomorrow. Meanwhile, it happened today rather than tomorrow. So it would have been a disaster anyway. But yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting. Some people have been asking questions. When will I let those who are going to be playing in the Wednesday night game know who is playing in that Wednesday night game? I officially go back to work, and by work I mean working for the channel. I officially go back on Monday. This last week was moving into the apartment week. And I have to say, it's been probably the most protracted move I've ever done, not because of moving furniture from one place to another, but because all of my furniture is coming from Amazon. And so you place your orders and it arrives in dribs and drabs, and then you have to build it all. I quite enjoy building, it's a good hands-on type of thing and that sort of thing. But after a while, you kind of get tired of socket wrench or Allen key into slot A, slot B type of thing. Although if you do ever need anything built using those diagrams and things, I think I've got enough qualification now to say that. I'm very excited as well. I'm very, very excited to show off the new set and stuff. This is the new chair that I'm going to be using. It's got a slightly lower back than the last one. It's my dark GM chair. I decided that the look and feel for the space was going to be sort of a retro leather chairs and sort of wood and then industrial steel, black steel. So I hope you're going to like that. It's been quite interesting. Anyway, all right, but this is not about me. This is about you guys. This is about you guys and your questions. So if you have a question, do what some people have been doing in the background and write the word question in front of it, and I will do my best to answer it whilst the internet remains stable. If I disappear again, I am just going to quietly go to bed. I'm going to call today a day. I'm just going to call it done. So there you are. Now, the first question that I see on the screen is from Mr. Cades or Mercades. I'm not sure how to pronounce that exactly. I have a player who is going through some real-world difficulties, and it's starting to affect the game. They aren't engaged and are generally bringing the table down. Do you have advice for what I can do with this person? Yeah, it's so difficult. It is so difficult on what to do when someone is having issues with their real life situation and it is affecting the table. I would suggest that you take a break, to be perfectly honest with you. Suspend the campaign. Tell everybody, look, you are tired. You need a week or 3 to recover. And I would then take 2 weeks. The friend, if you can help them, obviously reach out, do the good friend thing, do what you can do. But sometimes just taking a break for 2 or 3 weeks allows people to realize just how important the game is to them. And then you can start to test the friend and say, listen, has it been easier not having the game? Those kinds of things. If they say the game is their lifesaver, is the only thing that's kind of keeping them sane as they're going through these difficult times, then my advice would be do the good deed. Just try and carry on as much as you can, even though this person might be disruptive in a way, and try and work around what's causing that disruption. Give them the support, because oftentimes role-playing is a therapy for us. We do use it to express ourselves and to work through issues. So I would probe the person and see. You don't want them coming to the game because they feel pressured to do so. So by giving that little breather, you're removing that pressure from them. But then find out how and what they do with that. So that would be my initial advice. It is difficult. Big Goose says, Rhodesian Bush War setting ideas. My goodness. I don't know a huge amount about the Rhodesian Bush War. I know that it was an awful war, as well as the Angolan Bush War that the South African forces engaged in, which I think had similar aspects in terms of the types of conflicts. Now, both of those wars were fairly similar from my limited understanding of the Rhodesian Bush War, but they were very similar to Vietnam from the American perspective, where you had a militarily superior force engaging with guerrilla tactic rebel fighters or bush fighters, quite literally, where people could literally just vanish into the ground. I know that both of the, well, the Angolan Bush War more so than the Rhodesian Bush War, from what I understand. But I know that those battles, those wars, were very difficult for the fighters because sometimes they didn't feel like they were on the right side, and I know that that's definitely it definitely played on their minds. Now it's not the Rhodesian Bush War, but it's the Angolan Bush War. I think it's a new film coming out of South Africa called Moffie. Moffie is a slang term, I believe. It is a slang term for homosexual, for a gay person. A very derogatory term as well, a morphe. And that was a major thing in the 70s and the 80s, the 60s, 70s and 80s, which is that sort of similar time period that you're looking into. So that film might be not necessarily because of the LGBT content, but because of looking at the setting and looking at the equipment and the things that were available. So there you are. I think that's kind of where I would suggest you have a look. If you want a rule system for playing that, my default would be the D20 modern system using the D20 past rule book. If you really want to go back that far, I think they've got rules for military equipment and gear and that sort of thing. So you can check that out. What happened to my background? Where'd my background go? Why did my background go away? I don't know where my background went. Okay, I'm going to change my background. It might just be a short one. Let's go to this old one because we haven't used this one in a while. It's set to loop. Anyway, there we are. Okay, so let's see, where are we now? Remember to write the word question in front of your question, and if I miss your question, please ask it again. Thanos103 says, what's your favorite Star Wars board game? Rebellion, etc. I have to say Star Wars Rebellion, is it called Star Wars Rebellion? I think it is. It was a fairly recent game, came out about 3.5 years ago, based on the original computer game of the same name that was released in 1996. I have to say that's one of the most tense two-player board games I have ever encountered, but it is a two-player board game. So that's pretty good. Otherwise, it's not Star Wars Legion. It's the other one, Star Wars Allied Assault. I don't know. It's the one where it's basically role-playing because you get to make battle maps out of the floor tiles that they supply you with. What the hell is it called now? Anyway, I forget now. But it's all the minifigs. Otherwise, I was a huge fan of Star Wars X-Wing. Not that that's really a board game; it's more of a tabletop. And Armada, of course, was quite fun. But yeah, there haven't really been any that specifically blown my mind. There were a couple of card games that were great that I really got into. K. Berlitz, LGBTQA, and you've left out LGBTQAI for intersext plus. That I remember that acronym growing and growing and growing and growing. And when I was part of the whole movement in SA, it was interesting to see how that changed and evolved. But anyway, that's a whole different story. White Tiger 225 says, I had 2 succubi trick the players into starting a skirmish between the good druids and a town by stealing the evil artifact they protected. The druids protected, right? Then they tricked them into killing the Silver Dragon's babies while Mama Silver Dragon was away by making them think they were white dragons who attacked a village. The succubi cut down before the players grew wise. What can they do next? So the succubi. Why are the succubi doing this? What is their purpose? What is their goal? The players got wise to the succubi involvement. I think that could be a very interesting space to see why are the succubi targeting the players. I would examine that relationship personally now moving forward. So you've established that they're causing all this kind of nonsense, but why? Why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? That's something that I think would be very interesting. And yeah, I think that would work. It might give you some inspiration to look into that. Maybe it's a character backstory, something in there you could find. Yeah. All right. So there you go. Tylee Harrig says, part 1, I have had some bad experience with previous GMs. They were my only options for Dungeons and Dragons at the time, and I had to develop some bad habits to get through those games. How would you recommend I go about fixing those habits to enjoy the game and play it like I should without feeling bad? Okay, well, let's see. I would say, firstly, what are the bad habits that you've gotten into? Is it min-maxing? That's not necessarily a bad habit. Is it... I don't know. So you've identified what you think are bad habits. Some groups might not see them as bad habits. You say you're not enjoying the game because of these habits. If you've identified the habits, then I would stop them. But if the habits cause you to have enjoyment, or so maybe tell us, give us some idea, if it's not too personal, what those bad habits are, and then we can take it from there and go from that way. Watcher2417 says, is the stream now always Saturdays at this time? Yes, so the stream has moved from Sundays. It has now moved to Saturdays. So the stream will be on Saturdays. A lot of people were saying to us it's more useful to have it on Saturday rather than on Sunday, so that if you have a game coming up over the weekend, you can ask questions before your game runs rather than on the Sunday when it's kind of too late and things have happened already. AK Writer says, can you do the line, I've been expecting you, Mr. Bond? Turn with your chair, please. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's try this. Let's try. No, let's go from this way because you can see the whole chair, I suppose. So I've got to go all the way around. My goodness, this is a long turn. How'd they do this on the film? So it would be something like this. I've been expecting you, Mr. Bond. Now you shall die. That's more like Dr. Evil, really, than anything else. Anyway, don't say I don't try and keep you entertained. So there you are. Okay, so yeah, there's some solutions going on about those succubi. Lots of options in there. Caden Ride says, I just want to say that your channel's inspired me to start running a game. Yay, that's fantastic. Good on you. Good luck with that game. Come back next weekend and tell us how it went. And so thank you for sharing with that. Made your day. Thanks, Guy, AK Writer. No problems, no worries. Makes me happy to make other people happy. So that's good. We're all happy. Jose Ramirez in the Caribbean with the storms. And you've got internet. I'm here in London where it's mild and I don't know. Anyway, Hosu says, I have been seeding my players hints on the villain, but it is not present, so it's a never-present villain. Okay, it has not been openly introduced. At what point of the campaign is it good to introduce a never-present villain? The idea of the never-present is that your players need to have done enough missions that when the never-present villain is suddenly revealed, they look back and they go, that mission it was him. That mission it was him. That mission it was him. Oh my goodness. Of the 10 missions, 5 missions have been thwarting this person. So it's a slow process. It's a slow reveal. And I think that's what's important. Is to bear that in mind. So when is it a good time to reveal it? Once they have had enough missions where they have done things that then gives them the opportunity to click. Because if you reveal the villain and you go, well, remember that mission that you did where you killed the seahorse? That was my seahorse. And they go, what? Like the one that we did 6 months ago? Yeah, okay, all right, fine. Good. It needs to be on a concurrent basis, and preferably that Never Present needs to be upping their game in terms of why do they reveal themselves to the characters. If they've managed to avoid it so far, why do they reveal themselves? So, for example, and this is the classic example that I drew the idea from in the first place of the Never Present. When you look at Professor Moriarty from the Sherlock Holmes series, Moriarty was never an intended character. When Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was writing the initial short stories for the Strand magazine, he was just having Sherlock go on adventures and go on missions, and life was fine and good and dandy. But once he got to the point where he was running out of these sort of ideas for standard adventures, he needed to up his game, and he started, I'm projecting now, I'm assuming this is his journey, but having read his biographies and things, this is kind of what I think started to happen, was he needed an antagonist who would be able to take on Sherlock Holmes, because the biggest problem with Sherlock Holmes is a very similar problem to what you have with He-Man and the Master, He-Man and the Master of the Universe, but most superheroes. Sherlock Holmes was infallible. He couldn't be defeated because he was the smartest person in the room. Conan Doyle attempted the idea of someone beating Sherlock Holmes with the character of Irene Adler, who was a female protagonist who actually defeated Holmes in a very roundabout way. It wasn't an outright defeat because the case resolved nicely, but it was a one-up on Sherlock. And people liked that. So he introduced Moriarty. And the way that he did that was there was one adventure where the evil person, as he's being caught, says, Moriarty won't put up with this. But that's all he said. He just dropped the name. And then we had a couple adventures where Sherlock Holmes starts to become the target of assassins and that sort of thing. It gets hinted at a couple times. And only much later on do we start to then get insight into Moriarty. So it really is about, and it's subtle hints, and then the name. Or something that shows that there's more behind the scenes. The PCs defeat the big bad, and then someone goes, but how did the big bad know that you were here? And that links that there's actually more going on. So that's the way to do it. Saibai says, I played a game where a player dropped out in the first session on Roll20. What's the question? I don't know what the question is, Saibai, but if the players dropped out, as in they left the first session, so that's session 0, it could just be that it's not for them, or they didn't like someone else who was in the group. I wouldn't stress about it. Oh, he continued in the next line. Oh, wait. He is now in a game with a GM friend and acting the same way that he did before the game I played with him. Should I warn my friend about him? Okay, sorry, I hit enter by accident. That's absolutely fine. So, all right. People leave groups for a whole bunch of reasons. It could be they didn't like one of the players. There was background audio that they didn't like, or maybe they just didn't like their character and they were too embarrassed to say that they didn't want to do the character. In terms of warning your friend, I wouldn't do that initially because, well, at least not for the first 2 or 3 sessions. Once that's happened, then I wouldn't bother about it. But if that person also leaves on the first game, then you know that that's their modus operandi. So I wouldn't necessarily warn them just yet. Watcher2417 says, what about the books you write? What books did I write? I'm not writing any books. It's a lie. As a matter of fact, I can give you a sneak peek of what we're working on. I think I can. I think I'm authorized. Do you want a sneak peek of what we're currently working on? Because the complete guide to epic characters is still being written. It's still being written. But we delayed things because a new concept came up, which I think it blew my socks away. And I said to my business partner, I said to the Web Goblin, we've got to get in on this. It's brilliant. I hope you think it's brilliant. I'm going to show you. I don't think it's illegal. I don't think it's unfair. Let me just make sure this makes sense when I show it to you. No. So wait a second. View, page display. Is that right? No, that's not going to work either. That's the printing thing. Wait, I've got to get the view right because it's a special Special layout. No, that won't work either. Damn. All that and let's see. Wait. Okay. Hang on a moment. Hang on a moment. I'm building the tension here. I'm building up the tension. It's worth it. I think it's worth it. Is it this one? Yes. Okay, I found it because there's a whole bunch that have been coming through. So that's if you want to actually see it. You might not want to see it. I didn't think about that. I haven't checked chat. Let me check chat quickly. Do you want to see it? Dolphus Colin, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that $1 donation. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I do appreciate that. Okay, White Tiger says I want to see. We're all pretty tense now. Good excuse. Yeah. All right, okay. So, and I do want your honest feedback because we've shown it to people, some people, and they have really liked it. But they are biased, right? And I know you guys are biased as well because I look at the names and I recognize a lot of the names and I really appreciate the company. I honestly do. So if this is something that you think would be useful, if you had disposable income, would you get this book as a supplement? And if COVID goes away, that's the other thing. That's the other thing. So this is what we're doing. Okay, this is the idea. And this is the cover that Martin designed. It's battle maps. But it's not just regular battle maps. So the book is on a ring binder system. And what that allows you to do is that you can then have a complete play flat. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit more. So you have 3 pages which unfold as you open out. And don't worry about this stuff, that's all nonsense. So you get a battle map that looks like that, which is quite long. It ends up being about just under a meter in length. And then it folds back down into an A4 book, and it weighs as much as an A4 book. And so it's really simple to operate. It's really easy to operate. I've been working on the maps. This map was done by Martin. This is a bridge map that I've done. And you just unfold it as you need to. Now, if you get 2 copies of the book, you can line them up so that you get this effect. So here's a keep that I built. So if you only just need a wall, your characters, your players are trying to climb into the castle or whatever, and you don't have a castle built, you open out the page and there you go. You've got a wall with a little walkway through it and all that kind of stuff. This is still a production model, by the way. This is still a production model. Obviously, they are completely laminated, so you can draw on them and you can write in soft marker and all that kind of stuff. But if you get 2 books, you put them together. Obviously, if we do it as a Kickstarter, you'd line them up next to each other. The book won't be heavy at all. It really won't be heavy. So these are just a few of the mock-ups that we've started to work on. So it's an interesting one. Now, what we're going to be doing is there are pre-made maps, and then this one doesn't have it, but there will also be several pages that are just the grid. So you can draw on it and then fold it away, and next week open it up and your drawing is still there, and then dry erase that stuff away. So you can have your temporary maps that you're adjusting. Or you can have these. Now, there obviously will be vinyl stickers that will come with the book, so you can add on extra props and stuff. And for us, that's a very interesting space. How much detailing do we put onto the map versus how many little decals and stuff do you want to be able to stick on the map? And our thinking has literally been, well, the point of buying pre-made maps is that you don't have to do anything as the GM. But if you want to, you could then stick them on. and then use them as you so need. So if you wanted barrels or bones or broken trees to cross the road or that sort of thing. So when we look at the castle, we go, well, should we have all this interior decoration of the conference room, the kitchen, should we have that, or should that be stuff that you can stick into it? And we're uncertain. My opinion is that you don't want to have to prep a map. You want to just say to your players, you arrive at the Great Keep and you go, well, I don't have a map for the Great Keep. Okay, so I'm going to hand draw it. So you're still going to be, right? So you're still going to be drawing it. And so that takes away time. But at the same time, if you open up the book and it's blank and you've still got to put in all of the stuff into the room, you're not actually saving yourself any time, and you might as well have prepped beforehand. So my thinking is it's always going to be better if it comes preloaded with stuff, and then you can put decals over things, so you don't want the pillar to be collapsed like over here. So then you would just slap a sticker over it of a completed pillar, for example. So that's my kind of thinking. Now each of these squares is exactly 1 inch, so it will fit with your regular minis. Bearing in mind this is an A4 book, so that's an American letter size book. So once you fold it away, then you're back to just a standard book that's the same size as your D&D book, and so there you are. Now our partner on this is Dungeon Fog. These are Dungeon Fog maps, and so the idea is you buy the book, you get these maps which you can fold out in front of you, and there you go. But you'll also have exclusive access to a very specific section in Dungeon Fog where you don't have to be a subscriber to Dungeon Fog. You would just have access to these maps as they are if you wanted to use them. So we're still finalizing the details with Dungeon Fog, but that's the direction that they're going in terms of a market, a Dungeon Fog market. So you would buy these battle packs where you would get all of the maps and the assets that are already in them. You wouldn't get the other assets if you're not a subscriber, but you wouldn't have watermarks all over the place. You'd actually be able to use them. So that's the kind of the thinking. So you could use them online as well as then having the book. Now the reason why we want to have a physical book is quite simply because you want to just fold it out onto the table and just start playing. We're going to get prototypes made because that's the important thing. And the prototypes will be laminated. We've got laminated prototypes that are blank already, that kind of solidified the concept. And then we started to make some maps and things just to see how it will work. Now I am emphatic. I will never do something and release it that I'm not going to use myself. So with these maps, I said to the guys involved in the project, I'm like, if these don't fold flat, if my minis slide off of them, then I'm not interested. They've got to lie flat. So that's what we're working on at the moment. There will be a battle map that you can slide in underneath, so if you want to extend it on either side. And then this shade is an extra piece of, so it's all extra in the book. It's got a little envelope at the back where you keep your vinyls, and then you keep your hide, it's called, which is basically like a grayish texture, like a fog of war, that you can slide over these as you go along. So yeah, and yes, Jack, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. The dry erase, if you leave it for too long, it does become difficult to erase. However, here's a pro tip. If you have dry erase marker that you have written onto the page and you can't rub it off, write over it with the same dry erase marker, and what that does is it saturates it with the same alcohol that's actually in the pen, and then it will rub off, generally speaking. Now if you've left a great big smudge, that will obviously stain, but that will happen on any battle map, whichever one you go with. So there you are. All right, so that's currently what's going on. We're hoping to release that as a Kickstarter in September, and yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very, very interesting to see. I mean, this is something that we want to test and yeah, we will see. Now, how does the map stay level with the 3-page format, says Crit Fiddle? So that's the benefit of the ring binder, and that's why we've gone with the ring binder. So with a normal book, if you open a book and it's got a stack of pages, it's going to be unbalanced, right? And there've been a couple of attempts to address that. So even if as you fold out the pages, is that cliff face of the other pages underneath the problem. With a ring binder, you don't open the book just like that. The bottom half of the book actually opens out as well. So the whole thing is constantly on the same level. It's constantly flat, which works out really, really, really well. So you don't have to worry about that differential. So that's why we went with that ring binder, is that you're sliding the pages out from being that stack, if you will. So it sits very, very flat. The only concern that I have, and this is why we're waiting for final production proofs, is that the folds on those pages, when you lie them out flat, do the folds rise up slightly? Because I want to make sure that if they do, is the paper not so stiff that if you put a mini on, the mini's going to slide? Because if it does that, this project's over. It's as simple as that. It really must be something that is useful for everybody. Okay, so that's enough on that. You wanted to know, and there you go. Now you know. That's what we're doing. Okay, let's see. Is it possible to combine two different maps, like the castle and the bridge? So Watcher 2417, what we are doing is there are certain maps that will be combinable, and that's something that we're going to be polling people on. So for example, if we said, okay, this book is called the Book of Town, so it's all your town maps, right? It's the shop, it's the stables, it's the tavern, it's etc, etc, etc. Then all of those would have at their border the exact same texture. So you could put multiple books together if you wanted to, and have the layout of your town and done and dusted. The keep, for example, has what we call our standard grass texture. So anything that's got the same, is in the same daylight setting, will have that grass texture. So there's a watchtower which is at night, so obviously those won't sit next to each other very well. The bridge, there will be a road section, in which case, yes, we're going to try and make those points link up and see what happens there. But yes, we're not using 3 rings in terms of the bind. It's going to be a stack of them, so that's nice and robust, and there's no sort of things there. Right. Okay, so no, that's an answer on how to keep those maps clean. Jag, best tool for overcoming writer's block. Ran a one-shot for my first group that I ran, and now I'm having to create the next few adventures by hand, and I'm having trouble writing a good story. Okay, so Jack, I think to start off in terms of answering that question, you're not responsible for the story. And I know this sounds like it's just someone being pedantic. The difference between the plot and the story is that you as the GM have no control over the story. You only have control over the plot. So when you're looking at your next few adventures, think about the plot. Think about, okay, your adventurers did this in your session 0. Who noticed that? What happened about that? What will be a result of whatever it is that they did? If they had, if there was nothing, there was no outcome, there was no consequences of that sort of thing, I would start off simple. I would say, well, what system are you playing? What level are the characters in that system? And then find a point, choose a name, choose a person, choose a thing, choose an object, and develop a story from that. Work out from that and go, okay, let's choose a name. Let's choose Hegor. So who is Hegor? What does Hegor want? Is Hegor trapped? Do the PCs have to save Hegor? Does Hegor want to kill the PCs because Hegor feels that the PCs snubbed him? Is Hegor actually multiple people? Is it a code name? Those kinds of things. So I would definitely just choose a point, pin it, and then ask questions around it and figure out what they are going to be doing, because that's creating your plot points. So Higor wants to trap the PCs. Okay, so Higor has got to lure the PCs from wherever they are to the point of the trap. So how's he going to do that? Maybe he's going to employ a goblin who wears makeup to then go and try and steal something from the PCs to get them to follow the goblin into Higor's trap. I mean, that could work. So that's the process that I take, is just put a marker on the page. Just, it's a name, it's an object. Higor, it might be the great book of Higor. Who knows? That's how I start. That's how I start. AK Writer says, what's this awesome new thing in creating epic characters? I spoke about this quite a while ago. It was actually supposed to be the next full book that we release. Originally it was going to be aerial campaigns, but a lot of people went, yeah, aerial campaigns, not so interested. So I have started to write the book, A Complete Guide to Creating Epic Characters, which is... It started off as a complete guide to creating epic campaigns, where it was just a series of chapters helping you to work through your character process. But after working on it for a while, I started to realize that it would be better as an instruction book like Epic Campaigns, but also a workbook as well, and a worksheet type of approach. So it's going to be a lot more hands-on. It's a lot more practical. So yeah, there's definitely in the works. Obviously, once Battle Maps has now, if it gets to the point where it's going to go into production, then Epic Characters will be next year. I really wish I had more time. Watcher2417 says, will your book of epic characters be suitable for creating characters for novels? Absolutely. We create a character. The primary difference for me personally, as someone who has tried to write traditional fiction, literature fiction, and create characters and write scripts, the difference in characters, as far as I'm concerned, the difference in characters and how you write a character is that when you are writing a character for a book, or you're writing a character for a film, you're not necessarily writing it for yourself. You're writing it for the audience to see that character and to have that character do something for a reason. Think about it this way. Anything that you introduce into a film or into a book as a character has to serve a function. If you insert a character who comes in, doesn't say anything of value, just wanders around, and then has no function in that book whatsoever, it's really wasted space. And good editors will say to you, hey, listen, there's this whole dialogue with this character. It doesn't prove anything. It doesn't develop anything. It doesn't drive anything. It's just two people talking about nothing. It has no motivation. Let's cut it out, or let's rework it so that this person has some kind of value. So they really are a lot more functional when they're in a novel or in a screenplay. When you are creating characters for role-playing, if you are creating a character that you are going to be playing, you want to create a character that you're going to enjoy playing, that you're going to get some personal satisfaction out of. You might not like the character. You might actually think the character's rather horrid, but you want to explore that as a creative person. You want to see how this horrid person might be redeemed. That's a personal journey. Building those characters, however, is the same process, and you need to understand each of those people's processes so that you can then figure out how things work. So that's my suggestion. Nicholas Morrow says, do you have a favorite D&D setting and why? As an official setting like Greyhawk or Eberron or the other ones, I don't know them. I really honestly don't know them. Mystified. So to answer your question, do I have a favorite D&D setting? No, I don't. And to go even further than that, the only fixed settings that I will actually enjoy running is Star Trek and Star Wars, maybe X-Men. I don't know. I generally, because I started out playing Dungeons and Dragons in homebrew settings, Always. We couldn't afford to buy the D&D setting books. Well, they weren't books in those days. They were box sets. We always made up our own. So when eventually we started to go, oh, what? There's a Greyhawk setting. What is that setting all about? Or the other ones. I mean, Greyhawk, is it Greyhawk? Yeah. Anyway, I never got into them because it's like, well, I've got my own. I don't need to go and learn somebody else's history. So there you are. There you are. Jack says, my game is set in the Expanse RPG. There's a world setting that's an interesting one to play with. And my players want to acquire basic weapons for their ship. And I need to make the procurement of said weapons believable. They're a simple freight ship. Well, look, I haven't read the books of The Expanse. I've only watched the series. In terms of acquiring those weapons, it depends on what time period you're setting it in. Have the Martians started to dissolve and so weapons are available on the black market? Do they go to the Belters? Something that could be of interest is if they come across a marooned Earth ship that's empty and yet has got some weapons on that they can try and salvage. Why was the ship empty? Why was it abandoned? Don't do it that it's this weird alien bug crystal growing whatever thing it is. Don't do that because it's been done in the series. But maybe the crew abandoned it because they discovered Mormonism or something. You know, so I that would be my off the top sort of suggestion. Like a Dragon says, first time GM. That's awesome. How do I get started? I have a setting and a world and everything. I'm guessing I'm getting those kind of jitters. Yeah. Don't worry. You get jitters all the time. All the time. Today, I was nervous if my players were going to enjoy the game I was going to run for them. And halfway through, I was worried. I'm like, oh, I don't know if they're enjoying it, or I don't know. It's feeling a little bit labored because they were all being so polite about each other. So it was tricky, but I still get nervous before launching a game. Even my Star Wars game that I was running with my patrons, who most of them I would now consider them friends, but who beforehand I've played with Laura before. I was still nervous. So you're going to get nervous before every game, I think. When you are no longer getting nervous, yeah, I think that you might be in a comfortable space, and it's time to up that. Because I always try and make each game better than the last one. I try and include more and do more. Maybe it's descriptions and those sort of things. So don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Jay Shavluk says, will you have put a Braxia story history together? Netflix should come calling. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? I mean, that would be absolutely amazing. But so interestingly enough, my Patreon game, which is, well, it's not even a Patreon game, it's a private game, let's rephrase. So my private game, which is going to be starting next Sunday, I'm super excited for it. That is set in the world of Braxia. And I have been doing quite a lot of world building on that. There are primers for all of the races. I really want to drive more information. I'm doing city maps. I'm doing location maps. I've redone the map of Braxia completely. I'm not happy with the final outcome, but it is for now usable. So definitely there is movement happening there. Braxia is not forgotten. Don't you worry. It's just taking a little bit longer. So there you are. Just bear with me. Enazil still gets jitters after 20 years. So there you go. There you go. Best place to start is just to start. All right. Metalhead Banger says, are you hyped for Baldur's Gate 3? Okay, so haven't played Baldur's Gate 1 or 2. I tried. I really tried.